Well, good morning, everyone, to our Saturday Healing Connections meeting. It's the day after Valentine's Day, so it's a heartfelt meeting, and that's what this meeting is about. It's a Caritas Healing Connections. And first of all, I want to introduce that Patty O'Rourke will be doing a meditation to gather us all together, and then I'll formally introduce our speaker, Rachel Abbott, who will talk to us about emotion code, body code. But let's start with Patty, with giving us a gathering together meditation, so we can
And,
start this.
and it's a perfect segue, Carol, because see all the hearts on my top. So, and since yesterday was Valentine's Day, I'd like for us to do a loving kindness meditation. So it's always voluntary. So if you want to, you can close your eyes. If you want to, you can lower your gaze. And the very first thing in loving kindness, today's meditation, I want you to, in your mind's eye, call forth the person that you love the very, very best. It can be a person or an animal, but that call that person right into your very being and silently say to them, may you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at peace and may you be happy. And now that you've said that to the person that you love the best, I want you to take all that love, because so much of our times we don't bring in our own self-compassion and self-love. So say to yourself, may I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. And now just take somebody in your neighborhood and conjure them up. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you be at peace. And then take someone that you may not feel that much love towards, but we also, in our loving kindness, say to them, may you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you be at peace. And because our whole world and every living thing in it needs our loving kindness, hold our whole world in your hands. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you be at peace. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And when you're ready, and only when you're ready, come back to this present moment. And if you have to wiggle your toes or your fingers,
Thank you, Patty, for that wonderful meditation. It's perfect for Valentine's Day plus one. Thank you, thank you. And I could see why you're this energy person at for the VA and so forth. I could see how you just evolved into that over your career. All right. So now we're going to introduce our speaker, our Rachel Abbott.
Hi there.
And I just want to tell you a little bit about her, which is, I think, to me, I found it very unusual, or not, maybe not unusual, but it's always surprising to me that people that get into this energy work, the spirituality, come from such a scientific background. I mean, she was an electrical engineer and then went into nutritional therapy, to look at the body through this other lens. And she's kind of a detective using, muscle testing and this emotion code, body code tech, modality that she's made herself expert in. And she detects, imbalances in that way. She's like a detective to uncover emotional burden, uh, food sensitivities, body system disturbances that may be present in your body, your biofield. And her tool is this emotion code, body code. And it was developed by Dr. Bradley Nelson. And Rachel came to us into this Northern Virginia area from Pittsburgh. She's a mother of a teenager, a schnauzer mom, and a ferocious reader of fiction. So quite a background. Interesting persona. So I present to you Rachel Abbott, and I hope you enjoy her as much as I have enjoyed her. Rachel, it's
Yes,
all yours.
thank you, Carol. And Carol and I met at an event called Dogtoberfest, which was focused on dog parents and their furry friends. So, yeah, it seems nice to mention the dogs and hear from, was that Robin's dog?
Yes,
So
the dog
mine,
knew.
I locked him out for the day, so he's not coming into our meeting. But thank you for the lovely introduction, and Patty, thank you for helping us all get centered and grounded. My business is called Luminous and Grounded, which was that name was coined to bridge the gap between being an electrical engineer and being someone who was focusing more on healing and alternative medicine. So I'm going to talk specifically about emotion code and body code. They make up about 80% of how I spend my time, which was not the intent when I left my previous career to go into nutrition counseling. I ended up studying applied kinesiology at ULIN in Clearwater, Florida, which their program is called Nutrition Response Testing. So I got certified in nutrition response testing back in 2019, just before the pandemic started. So, if any, I guess I'll give you just a rundown. Traditionally, muscle testing is done using your arm as an extension cord for your body. And the practitioner, often a chiropractor, I'd say if you've encountered muscle testing, there's probably a good chance it was through a chiropractor. You're pushing on your body to get yes and no feedback. You're using the autonomic nervous system to test for good, bad. This is, essentially talking to your subconscious and the all-knowing subconscious, because if we tried to remember everything that we had to remember, it would be completely overwhelming. So we rely on the subconscious to remember some of the details and some of the things that we have trouble parceling together on our own. So, yeah, I mean, you can even say Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and your body should respond knowing one is good and one is bad. So, during the pandemic, however, we had to figure out how are we going to muscle test without touching people. So, Dr. Nelson's book. So let me switch. We've got emotion code and we've got body code. These books are both modalities. I'm certified in emotion code and body code. I'm going to use the term somewhat interchangeably. They are probably what I would call the Swiss Army knife in your healing toolbox. Um, the the emotion code was first published in 2007, though I think Dr. Nelson had been sort of elaborating and playing with it in his own practice, having been a chiropractor since the 90s. So eventually it was published, and folks like myself started to get certified. So, I call it a Swiss Army knife. Sometimes we need a pressure washer or machete. It's not going to solve all your problems, but it's really great as a an everyday modality. You can use it for maintenance, but you can also use it for some of the big issues. Let's see. So during early 2020, playing around with some of the various ways to muscle test, I am like Carol in the Northern Virginia area. A lot of my contractors or a lot of my clients are government contractors. I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be able to sit there with a pendulum or a dowsing rod and assess people. I had to, come up with something that was at least a little bit more conventional. So I use what's called the ring and ring method. So once I'm have your permission to proxy in and get this very binary yes and no information, this is yes and this is no. And I probably make it look a lot easier than it is just because I've been doing that for 5 years now. But I actually put myself through sort of a boot camp there. I had my own chronic condition. And the day that I had signed up for Dr. Nelson's seminar, I was having what I would describe as like a 15 out of 10 on the pain scale. I had endometriosis, so I was not able to stand up. I was not able to very much participate in this webinar, but I could lay in the fetal position and put my hands like this and just try to, practice. So it was about a 7 or 8 hour seminar, and he sent us for lunch, and I was like, I'm not feeling lunch today. So I just, I played around with it until I took my pain from like a 9 down to a 2. And I said, wow, there's something to this. So, and a lot of my clients have experiences like that. So in my pod in mid 2020, I was using the ring and ring method to assess people, which is great because it allows me to do this virtually as well. I have clients all over the country on the other side of the Atlantic. I even had a client in South Korea once. We had this 12 or 13 hour time difference, which was, we usually met at 8 or 9 o'clock. And then it was pretty quick to do this beta testing, to do ring and ring with them and then push on their arms. And I realized very quickly I was getting the same feedback. So, and that's all to say, if you are open, if you already know how to do some of the self-assessment, there's the lean test, there's the pendulum, there's ring and ring. You can also kind of do it like this on a table surface. This is something you can absolutely do yourself. You can use a practitioner like myself, but you can also read the book and listen to some of the podcasts and some of the resources on the website, which is discoverhealing.com. Emotion code is a simple chart. We've got 16 emotions, or I'm sorry, 60 emotions organized into columns and rows. So as long as you can ask, is this in column A? Is this in column B? Is this in an even row? Is it in an odd row? And then you're drilling down very quickly and asking amongst those 5 emotions, is this one of the emotions I need to release? So that brings us to intention setting, because you could just ask for things that are, top of mind. What can I release? I'm flustered right now. What can I release to get more centered and grounded? But I like to have my clients set intentions. We'll spend a good 5, sometimes 10 minutes noodling through that in the beginning. So asking them what they want to feel more of, what they want to feel less of. What do they ruminate about? Is it a certain person? Is it a certain event? Are they sleeping well? Do they have pain in their body or tension? So once we've established that, essentially asking physically, emotionally, spiritually, once I'm proxied in, we ask, do we want to look at all of these things today, or do we want the subconscious to prioritize and just focus on 2 or 3 of them? Now, when I say proxied in, as you can imagine, in DC, I have clients with a huge spectrum of spiritual beliefs. So I will say most of them believe in something. We don't all have to be on the same page as far as who we honor. I'll ask them for the language they prefer to use sometimes, but if we start with clients who don't believe in a higher power, then I'll just tell them up front, we don't have to talk about it a lot, but I'm going to ask my guides, my angels and ancestors, and those that I believe in, if I can act as a conduit on their behalf to get this yes and no information. So someone, who's just heard of it because they're neighbor referred them and they didn't know that there was a spiritual aspect of it. Sometimes those clients get a little bit weirded out, but I would say 90% of my clients come having a belief in something. It's always interesting. A lot of my Indian clients, they're always asking me to clear ancestral karma, which is something that in my Christian beliefs, we don't really talk about that, but I find it very fascinating. I also tend to think that we have a lot of different names for the same thing amongst different spiritual beliefs. So I will say that I will reinforce that I'm acting as a conduit. I myself don't consider myself a healer. I kind of cringe when I hear that word, but to act on their behalf and give them information that will help them heal. And again, I'm just giving them very binary, very yes and no information. And I will say, just because I do have a background in engineering, even the skeptics will show up saying, I think it sounds a little out there, but I mean, I saw you were an engineer, so it can't be that weird. So I do get some street credit for having been in a, I guess, more conventional profession and I worked in construction for 14 years. So once people learn that about me, they're like, okay, I guess she's like a regular person. I like to think I'm a regular person. I'm just maybe a little more honed into the gifts that, I'll tell my clients, we can't all be a Picasso or a Monet or a Beethoven. Like, I think God gave us all different gifts. So I just feel very blessed that I found mine. And that's all to say, this is my full-time job. It keeps me very busy. And I also do bioresonance, foot baths, and nutritional therapy, but Emotion Code takes up 80-90% of my time these days. People love it. I have a lot of clients who will tell me they're trying to, work on, they downloaded the app or they got the Emotion Code chart. And they'll brush their teeth and release 4 emotions. And then they'll brush their teeth in the evening and they'll release 4 emotions. They kind of develop it into a routine. So I can't reinforce that enough to even just keep a list, maybe in the notes tab on your phone, of things that bubble up, things you'd like to feel more of or less of or be free of. Um, I guess I want to share some stories and testimonials for you, but before I do that, I want to go a little bit more into Body Code. Emotion Code is a single chart. Body Code is an app, and it's got Emotion Code built into it. I can pull it up here on my phone so you can see it. So we're asking, is it in the first column or the second column? So say we were looking for, you had just been to the chiropractor, but your body was still trying to kind of settle into the right spot, say your C3 vertebrae. So in that case, it would probably take us to circuits and systems, and then it would take us to body systems, and then it would take us to skeletal, and then maybe it would direct us over to that vertebrae, but we would ask, can we realign that? Can we tell our bodies, I just need a little nudge there? Because clearly I'm not a medical doctor or a physician, but we're trying to help your body turn on its innate ability to heal. So say we go to that C3 vertebrae. We say, can we reset that or realign that? And we get a no. So then it's like, well, okay, what do we need to do first? So we'll start going down almost like Russian nesting dolls to identify all of the imbalances and everything that's connected and associated with each other. So there I might go back to the home page, and then it leads me to a muscle. Maybe it leads me to muscular system, and then it takes me up to the neck, and there's something in the posterior that we need to adjust. But then maybe we stumble into emotions for a while, because anytime you've got a vulnerability in your body, it's kind of this chicken and the egg thing where, is the vulnerability there because physically something's not quite right and it attracted the emotions there because it's so vulnerable? Or did the vulnerability occur because enough emotions got trapped and then you ended up with physical symptoms? I personally think it's a little bit of both. After having done thousands of sessions like this, I've definitely seen both sides of the spectrum. So Body Code will take us through physical imbalances, look for toxins. That could be environmental toxins, that could be toxins in food, or, say in the case of Lyme, take us to various insects or heavy metals. We might look at pathogens. We've got, actual active pathogens, but sometimes we have what we call energy of a pathogen, which is like a footprint say, a footprint left behind by a virus or a parasite, that we need to wipe away that footprint so the body starts, gets out of this hyperactive mode, this hypervigilance protection mode, and it's allowed to, your nervous system's allowed to ratchet down a couple of notches and divert that energy to something else to promote healing somewhere else in your body. So it's really interesting to see how things connect from client to client. You'll definitely see patterns, but sometimes you've got, like, there's an energy type called an idea allergy, and idea allergies are aversions to concepts. So, for instance, I had a client this week who wants to have more of an abundance mindset, less of a scarcity mindset, wants to be able to feel independent and, thrive. So she wants all of those things. She's verbalized them. She's wanted them for so long. And lo and behold, we find idea allergy to money, idea allergy to wealth, idea allergy to accepting money. So we had to clear all of those because somewhere in her brain, and we don't know what it is, maybe somewhere along the way she thought people with money are jerks. I don't want to be a jerk. So somewhere in her body, she developed that. So it's a really cool tool to use. Most of my clients will start with emotion code and then very quickly move over to body code, because we need to get those umbrella concepts, those belief statements that we stack all the emotions under, where all the physical imbalances manifest from. So I'll tell you my quick story. I already shared this with Carol and Patty. When I was first working on emotion code, still had my skeptic hat on, was like, okay, is this for real? And I found there's three flavors of emotions. There's your own experiences, there's absorbed emotions. So sometimes when our empathy is on overdrive and we're just these sponges, we collect emotions from other people. And then there's inherited emotions, and that is passed through the DNA, just like hair and eye color. So I was doing my portfolio to get certified for emotion code, and we were tasked with working on ourselves. And I had this, I wasn't thinking about it because it was so chronic. I'd had it forever. I had this really funky shoulder blade. It makes funny sounds. It's sort of like the gristle on a steak. That's how the doctors describe it when they submit my insurance claims. So I was drawn to that area. And I had all these inherited emotions that were from my mother's father. And he died of skin cancer before I was born, but I knew that he was a Marine. I knew that he had a Purple Heart. And, I knew a couple little other things about him, but not a lot in depth. So I did a little bit more of a deep dive. So aside from being inherited emotions like fear, terror, horror, um, I was like, well, how old was he when he experienced these emotions? And the muscle testing told me he was 31. So first I went to Google before I talked to my mom, because again, I was still wearing my skeptic hat, and I'm like, how am I supposed to convince someone else that this is legit when I'm not even sure I'm convinced yet? So Google told me that my grandfather was 1 month shy of his 31st birthday when his platoon sergeant was killed in Iwo Jima. The next guy in line was killed, and then he had to bring everyone else home. And I knew that he got a Purple Heart, so I eventually asked my mom, what happened, and she said he got shot. And I said, well, yeah, I figured that, but like how, where? And you saw her memory try to scan his body, and she was like, it was in his left shoulder blade. And I was like, okay, all right, let me try to tell Etna that. So I was like, okay, I can't make that up. So, there's knowledge that I didn't exactly have. My subconscious knew, my subconscious body had all the pieces. But my conscious brain didn't have all the information. So between my mom and Google and muscle testing, I was able to kind of understand what my grandfather went through and understand more about how that ancestral trauma can travel through our bodies onto future generations. Now, the other thing that's cool about that, when you have an inherited or even an absorbed emotion, like say you absorbed something from your mom when you were a child and then you had your own children and you passed that emotion onto them, when you clear it from one person, it clears from everyone. So this can sometimes be not just a spiritual experience, but an overwhelmingly spiritual experience, because sometimes you'll find an inherited emotion from 10, 20, 30 generations ago. So when you release it, you're releasing it from thousands of people, people that you've never met, and you're releasing it from future generations. So it can be very powerful, and you can be very exhausted after it. I'd say that's the only downfall of doing emotion code and body code. People tend to get pretty tired after a session, but they will also more commonly say they feel lighter. So once in a while, someone gets jazzed, like if they were holding on to something really, really heavy and we're able to find it in that session, they leave kind of energized and jazzed. But I'd say most of the time people want to go home and take a nap. And I always try to say, if you can put it off for just a couple more hours and go to sleep for the rest of the night, you'll probably sleep like a rock. Sometimes people have interesting dreams, that probably Dr. Nelson mentions it in the books, but I'd say maybe a quarter of my clients will come back and tell me they had really weird dreams that night. And that's just you've cleared the energy to the point where we can move on and we can move through the process in the session. But it's almost like a comet with a tail. We've gotten rid of the fireball so we can keep going and move along, but sometimes that tail is still kind of swirling through. So it's recommended at the end of a session to check for how long you need to process. It might be a couple hours, it might be a couple days. I mean, I've seen up to 6 or 7 days if it's something really, really big, if it's a significant trauma. Most of the time people don't come to me with a big trauma right out of the gate. But once trust and rapport is established, I'd say like, within the first 4 to 8 sessions, I'll get people saying, well, this thing happened to me. And do you think emotion code could help? And the beautiful thing about emotion code and body code is that you don't have to relive the situation. So if you give us as practitioners just enough information, or if you learn how to do this yourself and want to download the app, you can just give a date. Like I'll have, you could use September 11th for example. I don't need to know everyone's story of where they were and what they remember. If they just say, hey, can we clear September 11th, 2001 today? I'm like, sure. And what often will happen, especially if it's someone who was in New York or DC, is we'll have their emotions, their shock, their panic, their terror, but then we'll have absorbed from 8 other people the exact same emotion. And what I tell people about emotion code, it's like we're not negating the biology or the chemistry of the body, we're just adding the physics layer on top of it. We're thinking in terms of frequencies. So every emotion has a unique frequency, just like every food, every plant, they all have their own unique frequency. So if you think of the emotions, if you want to put them in music terms, because I think a lot of people relate more to music as a practical application of physics, it's like if we have 2 tuning forks, and you have all this anxiety, but it's dormant. It's been stored there for a long time. If you have someone come into your orbit who's resonating in anxiety, their frequency is going to activate yours. And then it's going to open up this whole farm of anxiety. And then you're going to feel like you're having the best day. And then you just got hijacked and you're like, what just happened? It's physics. So in emotion code, we say that's a blessing because it's almost like if you had a storm and all this debris got dropped in the swimming pool and then we take the net and skim it off the next day. That's kind of what we're doing with emotion code. It's like, there's a lot of unrest and you wanted to be in control of that, but at the moment if we can just accept that you weren't in control and go in with our emotion code net and scrape it all off, like at least no one else can come in the future and resonate and wake that up again because it's already gone. It's almost like taking an energy and throwing it up like fireworks, and then the embers come down and we're left with ash. That's kind of what we're doing with the emotions. They don't come back. Now, every instance of anxiety has to be found. Every instance of depression has to be found. So that has to be found. So that's why I like to mention rumination, because if you are a ruminator, we might find the same exact emotion 3 times in 1 minute, or 100 times in an hour. We want to put a cork in that. So we want to get aggressive and go in and say, let's get all of these emotions that are fueling the rumination and let's clear them out. So again, I just encourage people, if you want to use emotion code, just keep a list of the things that you think it might be able to help with. I never would have put my grandfather's time in the Marines on that list, but now that I know that, I will encourage people who had, ancestral trauma, if they know that their grandmother committed suicide, and they know that their mother she was there when it happened. Like, we want to identify things like that and clear them from the body and clear them from future generations and siblings and anybody else that we can help. So yeah, I have more of a lighthearted story about working on people emotion code. So you can, if you know how to do muscle testing, you can do it, and especially if you know how to use a method like the ring and ring, or you're good with a pendulum. You can work you can be in the same room, you can work on Zoom, for instance, or over the phone, because you can proxy in with a voice. But as long as you have a photograph of that person, I always tell clients, the best ones are the ones where I can see the eyes. You can work through a photograph and create a report and send it to them. So I have a niece she's 7 now, but she lives on the other side of the Atlantic. I don't get to see them very often. I don't have a good sense of what their bedtime routine is like or anything like that, except now I do from working on emotion code, working on my niece. So I was working through a photograph, because we've got a 6-hour time difference. So that's usually kind of tricky to sync up. And my sister was saying how my niece was just kind of on edge, and she was just sort of out of sync and not really herself. So I dug into that, and I kept finding um, terror and fear, and I mean, really unpleasant emotions, especially at the time she was 3. And I was like, what's going on? So I did a little bit of digging. So she had her own emotions. She also had some absorbed emotions. Um, and I was asking if we could figure out who they were absorbed from. And I was going through the roster of people. I was asking about their dog. I'm like, is this a real person? And I got a no. And I said, is it a fictional character? And I got a yes. And it turns out they had been reading The Big Bad Wolf every single night for 2 weeks. And my nephew was terrorizing my niece by hiding behind corners and jumping out and scaring her and trying to be the big bad wolf. So she had this whole like connection with Little Red Riding Hood and this empathy for her. And I had no idea, because I don't live with them, and I don't know that they have this routine where they read the same book over and over for a week or two. So yeah, we decided that book should probably get shelved. But it's one of those things, because I think, again, I think I come from a family of skeptics. My sister was like, I mean, you can work on her if you want, but like, I don't really understand. I'm like, it's fine. You don't have to understand as long as I have your permission. You can't work on it. It's not ethical to work on another adult without their permission. It's not ethical to work on a child without their parents' permission, or a dog for that matter. So yeah, that was really eye-opening for both of us. I also have a story. I get a lot of referrals from therapists, if their clients feel really stuck. I also have several clients who are therapists because they collect things from there. And I would say the same would be true of any healing profession. I've had clients who are nurses and doctors, but I have a lot more therapists. And I think because they're trying to ground and root for people who are going through some really tough stuff, and they can't help, even if only 2% squeaks through in a day, they end up at the end of the week with all this emotional burden. So it's nice to go and clean them up. But as far as their clients, for instance, I had a woman who had gotten car hijacked twice. And her therapist said, I really want to send her to you. Is that okay? Like, we've been spinning our wheels on this. We're not really getting through. That was a one and done. That was something Body Code was able to identify. There's energy called we had the physical trauma, the physical emotional shock trauma, and then what's called recovery interference, which is almost like a speed bump that develops in the body where you just can't quite get over the hump. So once we cleared out the recovery interference and the actual physical shock energy, she was able to move past that. So, and then I would say the most popular topic is definitely sleep. A lot of people having sleep issues. So, and that the root cause is so different for so many people. I mean, I could probably give you 12 different root causes for sleep disruption amongst my clientele. But physical pain is there. I've had clients who don't sleep because their spouse has something going on, so they're able to kind of, they don't see their spouse during the day, but then when they're laying next to them at night and their energy field is so vulnerable, they can't help but absorb some of that. So they wake up and they're like, I don't know why I'm not sleeping. And we go in and it's all absorbed emotions from their spouse. Um, but yeah, I want to make sure you know about discoverhealing.com. That's the website that Dr. Nelson's team has developed that has a lot of extra resources. And that's also if you wanted to learn more about doing emotion code for yourself, finding a practitioner to do it for you, or getting certified. Carol.
Could you hold up that book so that they can
Oh,
see the,
yes.
and hold it up until Ramona gets the name of the book and the authors. And
Yes.
Ramona, you tell me, you chime in when you have gotten these names because you've asked twice.
Okay. Oh yeah, and I was finally looking at the comments. So
Yeah.
um
Ramona asked twice about it. And then they want to know actually how you do it. What's the
Okay.
process? But Ramona, tell us when you've gotten the name of the book and the title.
Rachel, would you just say who the author is and I'll put it in the chat box? The emotion code is by
Dr.
who?
Thank
Bradley
you.
Nelson. Bradley
Oh,
Nelson.
Bradley. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
I
go
had
to
a
the apps.
question too. So
Oh,
once you identify the emotion that is the issue, how do you go about healing?
very good question. We use an acupuncture meridian called the governing meridian. It goes, the length of it goes from the top of the lip all the way around the skull down to the sacrum. But we're able to just interrupt a piece of it. So I always use my hand. The traditional way to do it is using a magnet. That's kind of the foolproof way of doing it. And you just want to interrupt this bioelectromagnetic field around your body using the governing meridian. So you're just taking your hand or a magnet and you're swiping and you're holding the intention to release that emotion or that energy, that statement. I think of it as like parting the Red Sea. We're just sort of creating an interruption there in the electromagnetic field or the aura. That's the abbreviated, less syllabic way to say it. But we're just trying to create that break so the energy that's trapped inside has a means of escape to get out. And like I said, it's almost like fireworks and we're just letting the ash fall. We're trying to not just move, but destroy that energy. That's a physics statement that's a little debatable, but we're trying to change the energy so that it's permanently gone.
Is that the same process if there's like a um, body, there's a place in the body where you find the
Yes, so you would hold the intention. Now we have with that one, that's I was saying it's almost like Russian nesting dolls. We have to keep going, going, going until we find the lowest common denominator and then clear back up. But yes, say your liver was imbalanced and it was just a little bit rattled. There wasn't a lot attached to it. I tell clients it's like hitting Control Alt Delete on a PC. You're going to swipe, but you're going to hold the intention of rebooting or resetting your liver.
okay, so that
Rachel, what's
doesn't
the name of the other author that I can put in the chat box?
Oh, it's just one author. Both books are by Dr. Bradley Nelson.
Okay, so the emotion code and the body code are by Bradley Nelson.
Yes, yes, he's a
Perfect.
retired chiropractor. He developed emotion code and body code. And
Thank you.
emotion code is built into body code. Someone asked about the app, I believe. Was that
Yes.
that
Yes.
was you, Ben, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so you can download the app in the App Store. There's a 7-day free trial. If you just want to do emotion code and practice with that and make sure that you feel confident in a means of self-muscle testing, you can just get the chart of emotion code online. Body code, you would need the app. It's like, did anyone ever read those Pick a Path books when you were a kid where you get to the end of the chapter and it's like, if you want this to happen, go to page 16. If you
Yeah.
want this to happen, go to page 37. It's kind of like that. So that needs to be app based. If you were trying to shuffle through a binder or a booklet, it would take forever because it'd probably be this thick. So that you can do a 7-day free trial, and then it's $29 a month after that if you feel like it's a tool that you're comfortable with and you can utilize it and make the most of that.
And say the app again. They're asking what's the website?
So the website is discoverhealing.com. And let me see if there's only one app. Let me make sure. I can't remember if it's a motion code or body code. Let me look.
Both of them are available. I
Okay.
downloaded the emotion code because that one doesn't require account. So
Yes. Yeah, I would recommend that. So yeah, then
yeah.
you have the chart. And I will say, we probably have access. There's 60 emotions on the chart, all considered to be negative emotions. We're not looking for positive emotions to release. The only one on that list that's remotely positive is overjoy. And I think the reason that's on there is because we always have to kind of fall from that. I see that one when I work on dogs. Dogs have this overjoy when they meet their people or their people come home, but then they have to recover from that. I think we as humans tamper our emotions a little bit more, so we don't always get super high and super low. We try to live in more of a smaller tolerance range. Um, but I would say, we probably have access to twice that many negative emotions. So remember, these are frequencies. You won't see the word disappointment on the list. And that's not to say that isn't a valid emotion, but you will find discouragement and betrayal. So rather than put twice as many emotions when the frequency is that similar, so sometimes clients they'll ask me to clarify, well, that's a weird emotion. I never thought of myself as feeling that way. Like creative insecurity is on the list. We think creativity, we think arts, music, dance. Um, but that one is also just for, self-expression. So if you're really stuck in the throat, if you bite your tongue a lot or you don't really have a true voice, that creative insecurity might show up as the emotion that you need to release. Now, if we were doing body code, it might then take me to throat chakra because all the chakras are in there, and then we might have to reset or realign the throat chakra as an
Rachel,
example.
one of the people asked about, can you compare this to Reiki?
Yeah, so yes, I would say they're cousins of each other. Reiki, my experience getting Reiki is it's sort of this whoosh of moving the energy. It's like unclogging a pipe. Emotion code and body code is more like someone has tweezers and they're coming in and they're cataloging everything and writing it all down. Your Reiki practitioner might have a few pieces of feedback for you, but we are cataloging every single imbalance that we found
And
and writing it down and releasing it.
and then what is your website?
Oh, mine is luminousandgrounded.com.
You're going to write that down? You're going
I
to put
can
it
put
in
it
the
in the
chat?
chat.
Oh,
I'll put it in the chat.
oh, okay. I'll let you do the
Yeah,
spelling.
I'm used to
Do it, Mom.
spelling out luminous after all these years. Luminousandgrounded.com.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And everybody, if you don't know how to save the chat, go up to the three little dots on the right-hand corner of your computer, and the three little dots will say if you want to save chat. When you're in your chat box, there's three little dots and it says save chat. Click on the save chat, and then you've got the chat. And after we go off, then it'll come up on your documents.
Does anyone have other questions about how to use emotion code or body code or its applications?
Well, you
I can
said
tell you stories all day.
yeah, sometimes you said it takes 6 to 8 sessions.
Oh, yeah, so it really depends on the gravity of the situation. Sometimes people will come in with I have this one thing I want to work on, and we can clear it in 1, 2, or 3 sessions, depending on how long the issue's been going on. Other times, someone has been carrying a belief of I'm not good enough for 40, 50, 60 years. that's going to take longer because we need to unravel that, because chances are they had a couple of partners as an adult that fueled that idea. They probably had a parent or a teacher or somebody in their family that fueled that idea. So we have to pull all those strings and unravel them before we can blow out the big concept. I would say what happens a lot is I'll have someone come to me for, say, back pain, and they get relief. And then they're like, well, wait a second, can I use it for this other thing too? And they'll, so they start seeing me every couple weeks, and every couple weeks they show up with a totally different list of things they want to work on.
And one of our people asked if do you work with an individual on Zoom or phone too?
Yes. Yep. All three. As long as I can proxy in with their face, their eyes, or I can proxy in with their voice. So we can do a live session, or again, I also do the photo proxy sessions.
Yes, I did it via a phone.
Yeah.
And it was I thought quite effective. It was kind of amazing to me. And I in my younger years, if I ever had to talk in public, I would just be wet. My blouse would be wet because I was so nervous to do it. And since I've done this emotion code, it it's changed. I mean, I'm doing this program, it's just kind of amazing to me. And like you said, it goes through the family, and I can see the difference in my family, whether they know it or not. I can see the difference in how they are, leaders of Bible studies, or they're presenting on this Caritas thing, which I never thought would have happened in my lifetime. So it's just kind of, an affirmation. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, if you're doing it to yourself, how you're using this ring method. So how do you know if you say you have this, this a negative emotion to fear or whatever? How do you know it when you're doing this, with your hands?
So if you're not quite comfortable with emotion or with muscle testing yet, I will encourage people to start with the lean method. I can show you what that looks like. So you want to stand with your hands to your side. I personally like to close my eyes. And Dr. Nelson talks about this in the book. Emotion Code, the middle part is the 7 different ways to muscle test. But I like to close my eyes. You always want to calibrate first. So you want to ask, like, my name is Rachel. I go forward. My name is Jack. I go backwards. Show me yes. So you want to make sure forward is yes. Show me no. Okay. So I encourage people to start with that method, because then if I were to say, can I clear an emotion that I collected from a client this week? Yes. Is it in column A? Yes. Woo, that was big yes. Is it in an even row? Is it an odd row? So you want to ask those opposing questions to make sure you're not getting 2 yeses when you should be getting a yes and a no. And once you're in tune with this method, then I would say you can move to that one. Just because you're testing your own intuition, and you're testing your own ability to get unbiased feedback. You also want to go into everything with the mindset of curiosity. If you're attached to the outcome, you're going to get that answer. So if your daughter was having a baby and you really wanted a girl and you muscle test, is she having a girl? Every time you're going to get yes. And then you're going to get a grandson. You'll be like, what happened? And then you lose your faith in muscle testing. So first, you want to make sure you're not too attached to the outcome. And then second, I like to ask, like, if you're trying to ask questions of that nature, you want to ask, am I allowed to know? Because sometimes it's supposed to be a surprise. So you want to ask, am I allowed to know? Or is it in my highest and best interest? You want to make sure you're phrasing the questions properly if you start using yourself as a human 8-ball. Make sure that you know. So when I was starting with moving from pushing on arms to like, how do I trust my own body? How can I go to a restaurant and decide what to eat that isn't going to make me bloated? I started in my own kitchen. I would just hold food against my body and say, you know, is it in my best interest to eat this? Yes, no. So I remember very distinctly, I was holding an orange and I got a no. And I was like, what's wrong with an orange? And I held a tomato and I got a no. And I'm like, I didn't think I had a problem with nightshades. What's, you know, because I'm a nutritional therapist, I know what's supposed to work for people and what's not, but I know every body is different. So turns out I have a histamine sensitivity. So tomatoes are really high in histamines, and citrus fruits will liberate histamines from your body. So I might, and also I might get different results in December versus like July when we have a lot of mosquitoes. Like when I have a lot of mosquito bites, my tolerance for high histamine foods is going to be this big. Unfortunately, that's usually when tomatoes also come into season. But yeah, so you can, if you feel like you have enough knowledge about, you know, having lived in the same body for so many years, like you know what foods work for you, but you're still trying to dial in the needle on like, sometimes I can tolerate this, sometimes I can't, sometimes I feel like I can do wheat and dairy, sometimes I can't. If you just hold that food against your body and see which way you lean, once you've calibrated and you know which is yes and which is no, I think once you feel really solid that you've established that own trust with your body and with muscle testing, oh, I ate that and I didn't feel bad. Or like, I would have eaten that, but my body told me not to. And like my brain, you know, I feel very focused and I have a lot of energy. So once that trust is established, then I would say move into using muscle testing with the charts and, you know, using it to release emotions, but make sure you feel confident with muscle testing first. If you get certified for emotion code on your own, they give you 6 months, and it doesn't really take you that long to work and make your portfolio, but I think it probably takes 6 months to feel confident. It takes half of that at least to feel confident with muscle testing.
A question again, Rachel. What happens if you lean on one side versus the one you described?
Oh, so are you saying if yes is backwards and no is forward? Is that what you mean,
We
Ramona?
have to ask Ramona. Ramona, unmute and ask.
Yes. Just
Yeah,
give
so
me a
if
second
you
here.
go backwards for yes and forwards for no, that means your body is either blocked or switched in some way, meaning your nervous system is stuck or confused.
I
Um,
meant actually, this is very interesting that you shared this with us because I had moments when I try to center and ground myself when I go, especially outside in nature, and then I would close my eyes and just feel that I'm going either, you know, front or back, but I wouldn't know what that means. But sometimes it would happen that I would lean on one side versus the other more. So that's why I was trying to clarify, like, what would obviously I didn't ask any question in my mind at that time, or maybe I was asking too many questions and too many
yeah.
answers came in too many different ways, but I did not know how to interpret, or I did not even know that there is a way to look into this and
Yeah.
there is a code behind it. So this is absolutely
When you
fascinating.
ask that question, I want to answer the question like I'm my Pilates teacher and make sure like structurally you're sound. Just make sure when you're doing muscle testing that if you're doing the lean method that your legs are about shoulder width apart.
Hmm.
You shouldn't be wobbling this way necessarily. You should be going
Okay.
back. So it might just be that your stance is not solid enough if you're
Okay.
swaying from
Okay.
side to side. So
Hmm.
you may need to adjust the
Okay.
position of your feet.
And
And
you
it
can also
is
do it
when
sitting.
you lean, it's standing, not sitting. It's standing, right?
Yes.
Obviously standing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you do this method, it's not like I don't need to push any of that energy to go back, like front or backwards. It's just the body that is going to have that motion, right?
Ideally. Now, some people who don't have total, like for instance, I will mention my Pilates teacher again. She had a lot of trouble with the lean method because she's so embodied in her body and
Hmm.
like the way that her body talks to itself, having done Pilates for 25 years, she really struggled to sort of make that little bit of disconnect so that the swaying could happen. So that's why I recommend closing your eyes. I feel like it's a little bit easier to act as a vehicle or a conduit to divine information if you turn off some of the outside noise, which for some of us means just closing your eyes.
Hmm. Okay, I will give it a try.
Play around
Thanks so
with
much.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, will do. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
And
Any other questions?
I just wondered with this going forward or backwards, you have to tell your body that you want a yes answer to be forward and a no answer to be backward.
Well, you don't have to tell your body, but typically yes will be forward and no will be backward. If you're backwards, that means that your nervous system is either stuck or confused in some way. And then usually you're not, you can use that backwards feedback to understand if it's food, if you have an immune challenge, if you have heavy metal exposure, if it's an emotional thing. So sometimes you can unblock yourself with a supplement or essential oils, for instance. Like if you're trying to muscle test and get rid of emotions, but you're blocked or you're switched, I would use aromatherapy as a passive way to sort of open you up, and then maybe you'll start to ideally you're going forward for yes and backwards for no. But if you can't figure out how you're blocked or switched, then just go with the information. So at least you're calibrated to the point you know which one's yes and which one's no. But as a practitioner, I have to be careful. I know the foods that will block me, so I have to be careful not to eat those, or at least take a supplement right after to make sure that my body's processing it. And then also, like, at the end of the day, I'm someone who has to check myself for emotions and anything that squeaked through. As much as I have a boundary energetically kind of drawn to protect myself, sometimes you'll be on when you're at work, but then you're standing in line at the grocery store and you don't realize everyone behind you is in an irritated state of mind. So you get home and you're like, man, I'm so wiped out. And then you realize you picked up something from some stranger at the store.
Carol,
So
I have a question, Carol. Can you hear me?
yeah, Marcia?
Yeah, please. Yeah, Rachel, are you familiar with the Bach flower essences? And
Yes.
because they deal with the 38 mental and emotional states of mind. And do you use those as an adjunct, or how do you see them relating to one another?
I see them as an adjunct, especially if you were in that state where you were blocked or switched. A Bach flower remedy would be a great way to get unblocked and unswitched.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question to Rachel. Since you mentioned the being in the store or just around people in different places, how can we protect our energy?
I get that question a lot. I feel like it's a little bit outside of my area of expertise. I look at it as something where we need to do maintenance, almost like exercise or brushing your teeth. I'm not sure if we can prevent it all. I'm still waiting to find out, but I know that I go out into the world trying to protect myself from everything. And either I'm missing out on life because I'm not engaging, or I am picking stuff up and I'm getting tired. I'm having to deal with it later. So I personally take the approach of I have all these different things in my toolbox. Emotion code and body code are something I can use daily. I might need Reiki once or twice a month. I might need to sit in a salt bath at night and soak off and slough off some of that energy with Epsom salt. Um, so I guess it just depends on how much you want to engage or not engage in the world. But I think, and I haven't cracked the code yet, but I think that we have to sort of do it more like exercise or teeth brushing, where we need to maintain some level of maintenance to clear you out instead of just full on protection.
For me, what I found that it works is when I'm having a shower and I'm visualizing the water as cleansing, and that's one method I use, and I found that it works. And the other thing that I've tried so far, and I think it works, but I need to work a bit more of that, is to imagine that I am in a bubble and I'm protected, and there's like something that protects me. I don't know. It's still something that I'm working on that part, but is I found that it works at times.
Yeah,
Not always.
I have clients who use the bubble. I've used the bubble myself. Sometimes when we end up finding idea allergies and some of these other imbalances, we realize that maybe the bubble wasn't permeable enough, or maybe it needs a different material. Sometimes when I think bubble, I think of like sort of clear, iridescent, like we can see through it. But some people need more of a mesh. Like it needs to be like, you know, you couldn't cut through it, but you can see if you look through just the right way, because that way we don't have we're not completely shut off from the world, but whether there's some bit of transparency to it visually or physically, I think that kind of keeps
Thank
you
you.
out of the rut of just isolating
Yeah.
yourself from the world.
Thank you.
We're about to the end of the time. Well, we are at the end of the time that has just flown by with you. You know, your presentation, Rachel. But if there is, you know, someone that has one more burning question, we can go with that. Otherwise, I just thank you for your presentation, Rachel. It was, this hour went by like it was 2 minutes.
It sure
So
did. Yeah, thank
it
you
was
for having
very
me.
interesting. And I put in the chat this previous presenter that is offering a discount for his acupuncture services. So if you want to take a picture of that or get in contact with me, I could certainly connect. But it's for people that are local in Northern Virginia. I thought it was very nice of him to make the offer for us locals. But again, appreciate your time and your passion that you shared with us. And Patty, you'll bring us home now.
I will. For our closing meditation, I would just want you, if you want to, close your eyes or lower your gaze, and I want you to take a deep breath in with your tongue behind your teeth. So inhale, gratitude, gratitude for Rachel, and exhale blessings on her. And then inhale again. Inhale gratitude for Carol and for Caritas for holding this community together. And again, blessings, and especially breathing in Jean Watson and all she has done for patients and nursing, and breathing out many blessings. And have yourself a blessed day. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And thank you so much.
So I thank you all. It was just a wonderful presentation for us today. I think you've got a wonderful response, and I think you need time to read all your thank yous and your, you know, all these people that so enjoyed your talk.
Yeah, this was a great way to spend a Saturday. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just appreciate that we got to meet. I almost didn't go to Dogtoberfest, so I'm certainly glad I did.